You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where we're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, isn't this rain nice? Is it raining where you're at, Taylor?
It is raining where I am at.
It's raining, not hard, but that's fine. Just first time getting water on the lawn, and just a nice day. I like rainy days, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, but it matches my mood today because I got to talk about foreign affairs, and most of it isn't good, but there's some good news here and there. Anyway, this is the first time I've done this in a while. We've had so many guests on lately that I haven't had a chance just to riff and rant and rave, and I get to do it today and probably tomorrow too. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about the
Hey.
elections. Yeah, well, I got to get things off my chest, man. I got, I got to let people know how I feel. Okay, is the link sent yet? The Facebook link?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this silly thing. Anyway, today we're going to talk about foreign affairs. Hence the title of the show. What in the world's going on? I'm going to talk about the Russia and the Ukraine, China and the Saudis primarily. Lots going on that affect us here. Foreign policy is one of those things that do not drive elections unless they directly impact us here. And of all the three, the Saudis will probably impact us the most, but still, it's it's important to know what's going on. And I have an observation about the relationship between the Saudis and Joe Biden and how that's affecting you and me in particular. It may not seem like it should or would, but there you go. Okay, there's the link. Okay, and so I need to get this going here, get the shares because people are waiting desperately for what I have to say about this particular matter. Would you say
Desperately.
desperately? Yeah, hang on. But anyway, how you doing, Taylor?
I can't complain. Busy
Mm,
weekend, but
busy weekend?
yep.
Is that right? Um, hmm. I'm still having to work on this business about sharing. I just, Facebook really. Hold it. There you go. But I'm telling you this, the Facebook, it just really drives you a little bit nuts sometimes. It really
They
does.
make it so easy for everything.
Do they? You think
Nope.
so, huh?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at
No,
all.
I'm trying to share it with other people. Anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about all the sponsors while I do this voodoo that they're putting me through. First of all, Daniel, thank you. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. Things are going well, I hope. I hear a lot of good things about this place. I really do because it's well maintained, it's well equipped, it's it's a good place to do your business, a good place to do your workout because it's got training, it has a regimen to it, it has trainers there. It's not just go there and start throwing it around. They'll help you with what you're trying to achieve, whether it be getting in shape, a little muscle building, a little weight loss, whatever. They have people there that'll help you with that. So give it a shot, guys. See what you say. All right. Thank you also to Shandy Stogsdill at the Shandy Stogsdill group. She is going to be on again, I'm sure, very soon. There's lots going on in the real estate business, in the real estate areas. And I just always like to have her on the show because she comes so very well prepared, and that really helps. She comes with the notes, she comes with the facts, and so she can help you find a good home and also the best rates. And so that's a great thing. Also, thank you to Otto at our place. I was just there this morning. I met a friend of mine there, one of my BNI buddies, a little one-to-one as we call it. And it had the usual great breakfast as always, and so did he. And it's just a great place to do it. And it was nice sitting out on the patio and listening to it rain. Also, since I have Otto and then Chris, no, let's go to Chris. Yeah, have Chris at Wild Cigar and Culture. Both of these two gentlemen are sponsoring my election contest. This election contest is starts today. Actually, the early voting starts today and goes through the next 2 weeks. It's now until November 4th, including Sunday, and then November 8th, of course, and then 2 weeks from tomorrow. And if you show an I voted sticker on my page or Otto's page, but preferably mine, so I can keep track, then you'll be put in a contest. And there's going to be two winners, and each of the two winners will get a gift card from both Otto and from Chris to their respective places. So you can get yourself breakfast and go have a smoke afterwards, or vice versa. It's a great place to do business at Wild Cigar and Culture. They got a lot going on. They have a Halloween party next week, next Monday night. So I'll probably mention that more than once. But Taylor, you voted yet?
I will.
The vote, it's the polls have been open 4 hours. What are you waiting for?
Well, I've been working.
Have you been working yet?
Have you voted yet?
That's I am
Well,
a
the polls have been open
celebrity.
for 4 hours.
Mhm. I'm going this afternoon probably with the missus. When it comes to early voting, I've come to accept it more. I prefer to vote on the day of, but it's like, well, it makes it easier for my wife to make because she works some days now that even though she's retired, we still have overlapping schedules. So anyway, we're going to vote either today or Wednesday afternoon. And probably if the trends continue, about 60% of Texans will have voted by election day. So, and I'll be talking more about that. But enter the contest. It's a great contest to be in, and it's not only showing your great patriotic pride and your supportive of our country and whatnot, because that's the most to me, other than maybe direct military service, is the best way that people can show their support for their country. And I hope we have a really really good turnout because it drives me a bit crazy that a minority of our population may determine who's going to lead our state or who's going to represent our district. So we need to have good turnout. Anyway, so be on board with that election contest. Also, thank you. Oops, somebody just dinged in, or somebody did. Um, okay, I'll get it in a minute. Uh, Tiffany Nico at Local Life Magazine. They'll be coming out next week. I'll have her on the show hopefully sometime in November. She's hard to get hold of, tell you the truth, for me because she spends a lot of time on this publication. I promise you. I've gone over to her office before, and they're working on this thing all the time because they want to have a good product, not just for good advertising, but they also want to have really good service to their customers, and they definitely have that. Now, also, she does social media productions as well, or media services. So if you're looking for that, she can help you with that. Also, thank you to Gayla Southern Gym. It's Christmas time, guys. Yeah, she has a lot of inventory. She's got repairs, she's got design, she's got cleaning, she's got the whole thing going on. And so I give it a shot because she really has some good stuff, and it'd be good for the loved one in your life, something for your daughter or granddaughter. She got the whole thing. So on top of the Windmiller building, they're still currently in construction for the bottom floor, but it takes time, but hopefully she'll have it done very soon. But she still has a lot to offer on that third floor. So go by Southern Gym. Also, thank you to Michelle over at Hot Works, 731 John Jones, near the Chicken Salad Chick, and then across the street from some of the clinics there, the health clinics. It's a great, safe environment to do a workout with the infrared system. There's 11 different types of workouts. It's all really good. I have a lot of guests on here coming here, and they're members of this High Works. And all of them say how much they really enjoy not just the workout, but the whole atmosphere and the culture, if you will, over there. It's a good place to do your business. Hot Works, so 731. And if you're looking for a little bit of health insurance, well, health insurance. I misspoke. Let's try property and auto insurance and life insurance. Melissa Harmon, 682-804-0534 for Texas Farm Bureau. And like I've told y'all before, I chose her as my new agent. And it's really nice to have somebody that's an agent because I could call her up and get answers directly as opposed to going through all this phone tree business in the bigger firms and get two different answers from 8 different people or vice versa. And so Texas Farm Bureau Insurance with Melissa Harmon for your auto and your home and your life insurance. She's got the whole thing. Also, thank you to Pinnacle Concepts, 303-324-9906 with the Danette Juicer, with the interior designs. I'm not going to ask when the studio will be redesigned
Good.
because Taylor gets a little tense, but whatever. But it's going to be sooner rather than later. I know that much. 303-324-9906, and she can help you with your interior design needs, both commercial and residential. All righty. Where do I begin? I want to start with Russia. This has been a really interesting thing to watch. I'm reading. I just finished reading a book about the end of World War II, and it's from the German side of it, as opposed to what Americans were doing and American maneuvers. It's basically how the Nazis were trying to maintain this fiction that they were going to win this war, and how the propaganda was constantly bombarding the German people about how we're just on a doorstep of victory and how we're fighting the enemies of culture and civilization, on and on and on. That's exactly what's happening in Russia. What's happening in Russia is that they are losing this war. They're not. not holding steady. They are losing this war. There was a film clip from the news last night, and so Taylor, if you'd run that particular one.
High calibers and even higher spirits as Ukraine's military appears ready to retake Kherson, the first major city to fall to Russia in the early days of the war. There hasn't been a battle here yet, but Russia is already retreating, pulling out soldiers, officers, heavy equipment, even moving civilians by ferry to the Russian side of the Dnieper River. They're using so-called civilian evacuation in order to hide their preparations for street fighting, said this military spokeswoman. One woman in Kherson, reached by text message, described the chaotic Russian exodus. The Russians are stealing everything, she told me. Russians are fleeing from neighboring villages and towns to Kherson, she said. They look bad, like they're sick. They try to scare the locals, saying the Ukrainians will shell the city, she wrote. Nobody believes them, except for a few collaborators. But some Russian failures are far from the front lines. In the Siberian city of Irkutsk, deep inside Russia, a fighter jet accidentally slammed into a residential area, killing both pilots. It was the second such crash in just a week. Families line up to feed new Russian recruits. One woman compares their conditions to prison. As fresh Russian soldiers head to the battlefield, more are returning in body bags. This family burying their son. He was deployed to Ukraine after only 5 days of training. Glimpses of how Russia's war is wearing on its people.
And Matt joins us now from Kyiv. Matt, Russia is now alleging the Ukrainians are preparing to use a dirty bomb on its own territory. What's the White House saying about that?
That's right, Jose. Well, the White House is rejecting those claims, and they're accusing the Kremlin of drumming up that story in order to justify their own escalation of the conflict. Jose?
All righty. Like I just mentioned, I'm reading this book. I just finished it about the fall of Berlin and the fall of Germany and the end of the war, the last year of the war. It is exactly parallels what's going on. Massive draftee evasion. They're, like, just like the Germans, they were using 16-year-old boys at the end, or younger in some cases, for defense. They were dragging every man between the ages of 16 and 60 and sending up to the lines, barely trained, if at all. And they were just getting, particularly on the eastern part of the war against the Soviets, they were just getting mauled. And this is what's happening now. What you have in Russia is that it's been estimated 300,000 draft age men who have left the country, gone into other countries to evade the draft. And you have gangs of Russian army, quote, recruiters are going through the towns and smaller villages and forcibly throwing young men onto a truck and drafting them that way. And so they're basically shanghaiing these guys into service, and they put them in these terrible conditions, train them for a week, throw them in the front line, and they're either throwing their guns down and running at the first shot or getting killed at the first shot. What was happening with the Russian part is that they are on full scale retreat, and it's not just a strategic withdrawal or anything like that. They are running because most of these guys now are poorly equipped and poorly trained. The morale is highly negative, and you really can't fight a war with poor morale. And the morale is very dark on the Russian side. Russian prisoners who are giving themselves up in large numbers are telling interrogators that all this is going on, that they're abused, under-equipped, underfed, no medicine, no warm clothing, and they're being thrown into this war, and it just a slaughter. And so what you're seeing now is a full-on retreat. And they mentioned that city of Kherson, that was the first major city that went down back in about March or April, and now it's about to be recovered. That's a major victory for the Ukrainians. So it's just incredible to watch that period of time. I was reading about mirror so closely what I'm reading or seeing in my own two eyes now. And you're also getting foreign involvement in war on the other side. Now, we all are well aware of the European and American assistance of the Ukrainians, but now the Iranians are involved. We're having evidence of Iranian, Iranian troops. We're having evidence of Iranian weaponry, like the drones. That's been proven beyond a doubt, even though the Russian media denies it. By the way, anything that is said on our side, they just say we make it up. Yet another parallel to the fall of Germany. However, I'm just saying that the Iranians are very much involved in this. And sooner or later, it's going to get to a point where they're going to have to be directly confronted as well. And what I'm worried about is Mr. Biden is so intent on a nuclear agreement that he's basically willing to overlook just about anything. And basically willing to do what Obama did, which was pay the Iranians off so they supposedly won't proceed with a bomb, which is a ludicrous farce. But sooner or later, Iranian involvement in this war means we're going to be in direct confrontation. There's going to be Iranian troops on the ground, if not already. There already is widespread use of Iranian weaponry. My point with all of this is that Russia is badly losing this war. And that could lead really to one of two things. I think the first thing is more likely, and that is eventually Vladimir Putin's going to use low-yield nuclear weaponry. The idea of the Ukrainians using it on their own territory is just not even worth talking about. It's ludicrous. But the point is that I feel like Putin will get to a point where he's so desperate and he's lost so much support amongst the Russian people, and there'll be rumblings that he will be overturned, similar like they were talking about with Hitler and his crew, by the people, and have attempts on his life like they did with Hitler, that he's going to basically do whatever it takes to stay in power. And maybe that might mean dropping low-level nuclear weapons. Of course, we talk about low-level, that's still incredibly destructive. But the war is going badly for Russia. It's not going to get any better as the weather turns. The Ukrainians have fought like warriors, like heroes, and the Russians have behaved like animals. As they go through these towns and liberate these towns, the stories are coming hard and heavy about how the Russians beat, tortured, raped, pillaged, loot, burned all those villages and their people. This is what the Russians did with the Germans, as they were moving through into Eastern Germany. Millions of German refugees are running as fast as they could to get to the West and giving themselves up to the British and American allies because they knew they'd be treated much better. Whereas you look at the territories that were captured by the Russians at the end of World War II, this same thing was playing out. Mass graves, mass executions, abuse, torture, and rape. This is what's happening now. The Russian way of war, historically, not just the last century or so, but since their creation, has been a war of terror. That's how they conduct wars, is that as they move through territories, they rampage, pillage, loot. Women, children, unsafe. And they all say, oh, it's just Ukrainian propaganda. No, it's not. The evidence is beyond contesting. And so when I hear people like Kevin McCarthy, who's probably going to be your next Speaker of the House, start talking about maybe we're not going to help the Ukrainians much anymore, I think that's rubbish. This may be one of the very few things that I think Joe Biden has done decently, and that is support of the Ukrainians. You know, I'm not a fan of Mr. Biden, far from it. And tomorrow I'll talk more about that. But this point, I agree with them. The Ukrainians need our support, and with that support, they've done remarkable. And when I hear some of the Republican leadership talk about scaling back that support because of, you know, a goofy way of thinking about how we should be involved in the world affairs, I totally oppose that. I fully support our Ukrainian friends. And I say I doubt they have the time or the inclination right now to listen to Mr. Allard's neighborhood in the Ukraine, but I would say, you know, give them hell, because the Russians have shown what they're capable of and what they will do once they take control. And for McCarthy and any other of these Republicans that say we need to scale back our aid, then they're just doing it for political benefit. They're not doing it for the true best interest of our country and theirs. They're just doing it because they want to gig the Democrats with it. Like I said, this is one of the few areas in which I am with Mr. Biden on. And we need to be behind the support of Ukraine and not playing political crap like Mr. McCarthy is doing. If he becomes speaker, which I think is likely, I hope he reassesses the Ukrainian support and supports it fully. Let's go on to China. China just had their 5-year party Congress. They do it every 5 years, and where they elect the new leadership of the party, which in effect is the leadership of the country. Okay, there is no outside existence between the government and the party. They're one and the same. So whoever is elected leader of the party is also the leader of the country. He is their president. Current president was Xi Jinping, and he had been there for 2 terms, which, according to the Chinese constitution, the Communist Party rules, he was supposed to step down, but he did not. So check out the next clip, please, the China clip, please.
Overnight in China, President Xi Jinping began a historic 3rd term after ending the 2-term limit for presidents several years ago. Xi consolidating his control of China after a week-long meeting of the Communist Party. There was a remarkable scene on Saturday when Xi's predecessor, Hu Jintao, was abruptly ushered out of the room, appearing to resist before he was led away. The official Chinese news agency reports Hu was in ill health, though many doubt that explanation.
Mm-hmm. A little history here. When Mao Zedong died in 1976, China went through a lot of reforms under a gentleman named Deng Xiaoping. And Deng Xiaoping basically created the modern Chinese state, and the way it's structured now, and the party and the relationship between the party and the government, and also the party and the government and the economy. The Chinese explosion economically, so to speak, started under Deng Xiaoping back in the late 70s, and it really took off about 25 years ago. And there's been a tremendous amount of cost within the country for that, but that's another subject entirely. But what does this mean for the United States about Xi Jinping doing it? Xi Jinping is the most autocratic dictatorial president China has had since the death of Mao Zedong. No Chinese leader has amassed the amount of power Xi has done in the last 5 to 10 years. He is, again, probably, and I'm not saying this for as a hyperbole, but as the truth, Xi Jinping is the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao. And he has a much more, shall we say, aggressive response, an aggressive approach to the West, particularly the United States, particularly Taiwan. I have no doubt within the next 5 years, there will be a military incident between China and Taiwan. I would say within the next couple of years. I would say it'll happen during the Biden administration. The consequences of that, it would be tremendous. Here's the thing, and a lot of people make a parallel between Taiwan and Ukraine about should we support them and all this other business. Yes is the answer for me. Back in the 90s, when Ukraine became independent, we made solid promises that we would be there to support them in case of any kind of aggression by the Russians, which at the time was seen as not that big a threat. And it just shows how short-sighted American foreign policy could be, because if they had studied Russian history even a little bit, they'd have known that Russia is perennially aggressive, historically aggressive against their neighbors. It has since the founding back in the 800s. But we guaranteed Ukrainian support and safety, and in return, they gave up their nuclear bombs. The reason why Ukraine didn't have any bombs is because they gave them up in return for our solemn oath and word that we would support them. Same thing with Taiwan. We have supported Taiwan since its creation after the fall of China to the communists in 1949. And even though technically we only recognize the communist version of China, we still do a lot of support and business with Taiwan. And they are a major chip supplier for our microprocessors and whatever else. Xi Jinping has the power and authority to make this happen now without a lot of internal opposition. There is no internal opposition anymore. The reason why they escorted that older gentleman off, Hu Jintao, the previous president, is not because he was ill. That's a farce. It's because he was making objections to what was happening on the floor and what was happening at this party Congress and the 3rd term that they were about to give Xi against the former rules. And so they just said, enough of you, and they just dragged him off, claiming illness, which is trash. Xi Jinping, is he a threat to the United States? The answer is sort of. And I would say, when I say sort of, I would say he's not a direct threat in the sense that we need to worry about him bombing, United States today, but he's going to be an obstacle much more formidable than the Chinese have been previously. They do support Russia to some degree in this war. They are going to support the Iranians. They already do. They are going to be a major player. They're going to replace Russia in our perspective as our number one geopolitical opponent around the world. Am I concerned about Russia? A little bit. Am I concerned about China? A lot of bit. And their economy, first of all, let's say just a word about their economy. It is not nearly as mighty and powerful as we make it out to be sometimes. Sometimes we make it out to seem like it's just they're an unstoppable force. They have significant economic and environmental and social problems. But again, that's kind of beyond the scope of this particular podcast. Maybe I can do that in a couple of weeks. But pay attention to what's going on in China. Pay attention. It affects our economy, certainly, but we may be forced to take a very adversarial approach to China very, very soon. Lastly, talk about the Saudis. This is interesting. The Saudis really put it to Joe Biden a couple of weeks ago when they cut the oil production. But I'm going to show you a clip that it's about 2.5-3 months old. So I won't go all the way through because it starts referring to things that have already occurred. But it was the meeting between Joe Biden and his Saudi leaders. So if you'd roll that clip, please.
Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We do begin with breaking news on the world stage. Just moments ago, President Biden delivering remarks from Saudi Arabia after his controversial meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the alleged mastermind behind the murder of journalist and Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. He told reporters he raised the killing of Khashoggi with the Saudi Crown Prince and also told him he believes he was responsible. The president saying he was straightforward and direct with MBS. He then took a few questions from reporters. We're going to get to all of it in just a moment. President Biden was reluctant to make this visit, perhaps out of concern of images like this one, this fist bumping with MBS when he arrived after vowing to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. Washington Post publisher Fred Ryan called it, quote, worse than a handshake and, quote, shameful. But the White House finds itself in a bind due to Saudi's key role in global energy markets as inflation soars. When President Biden and the Saudi delegation appeared on camera earlier today, reporters in the room could not hear the remarks made by either the president or the crown prince due to restrictions placed by the palace. My NBC News colleague Peter Alexander still tried his best to ask MBS about Jamal Khashoggi. Take a listen.
Jamal Khashoggi, will you apologize to his family, sir?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. President Biden is Saudi Arabia still President Biden.
All right, that's good enough.
To new reporting.
Here's the thing. Like the report mentioned, when Biden was running for president, he said he's going to make them a pariah because of their support of uprisings in other Middle Eastern countries like Yemen, for example. Also, because of the murder of a Washington Post reporter named Jamal Khashoggi, who is an American citizen. Now, once Mr. Biden found that he couldn't square his environmental policies with cheap oil, that he decided he had to go and do his best and tip his hat with his hat to the Saudi leaders, Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman is the crown prince and also the leader of their government, and they call him MBS for short, but MBS was directly linked to that murder. Second of all is that this whole thing is ridiculous in the sense that we had to go there in the first place. Not only because he said he never would and make them a pariah, but he cuts domestic oil production, then he goes over there to plead with them to increase production. Second of all, he mentioned that, yes, I brought this up about the murdered diplomat, and the Saudis come out next day after this particular report said he never brought it up at all. So Biden was either lying or delusional, or maybe the Saudis were lying, but I don't, they basically called his bluff and said, he never brought it up. And so that part is untrue. Do I believe Biden or the Saudis? I believe the Saudis. Because why? Not because they're honest men, they're nothing like it, but because we've seen so many times Mr. Biden has said these things that turned out to be either highly, highly exaggerated or just outright untrue. And tomorrow I'm going to refer to it more. But look on my Facebook page. It still has got me kind of spooled up. Look on my Facebook page because it talks about how Mr. Biden got a law passed that never existed, does not exist. was never put before Congress, and he's bragging about getting it passed. It has to do with the school loan forgiveness. So please check out my page if you want to know what I'm talking about more clearly, but I will be talking about it again tomorrow. Anyway, back to the Saudis. The Saudis basically despise Joe Biden, and and as good luck could have it, one of the main articles in the Wall Street Journal this morning says U.S.-Saudi relations buckle, driven by animosity between Biden and Mohammed bin Salman. The subheadline, lack of personal trust accelerates a years-long split driven by geopolitical and economic forces. So basically, since Mr. Biden doesn't care for the Saudis and they don't care for him, it's going to affect oil prices. That's just wonderful. We should never have been put in a position that we have to go to the Saudi Arabians with our hat in our hand. Please turn up the volume on the oil when we have what we have here in the United States. This idea that we had to go to Saudis like we did in the 70s, pleading with them to increase production, is humiliating and so unnecessary. You know, for the environmentalists in the crowd, I get you what you're saying, but what difference does it make where the oil is coming from and where it's being burned? Okay. It does matter if it's domestic, though, not just for jobs, but also for gas and diesel. Well, on the side note about diesel, by the way, it just occurred to me that my cousin, the king of Kiowa County, told me that there's about a 26-day supply of diesel left. And I said, well, I need to see that in news clip. And he sent me 3 different articles from mostly agriculture-related news publications. And then it came out in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. So we're running short on diesel. And you think that's a problem for my cousin? It is. It's a big problem for us because how do the groceries get to H-E-B or City Market? It's by diesel train and diesel truck. And we're going through these environmental problems because we cut our own throat about drilling here in the United States. And so we have to go to the Saudis and say, please, pretty please, with some sugar on it. That's what really makes me mad. And so, but then to top it off, 2 weeks ago, OPEC Plus announced a cut in production, 1 million barrels a day. So what are we going to do? Well, first thing, we're going to drain our strategic petroleum reserve even more. The strategic petroleum reserve is down to its lowest level in about 40 years, since the mid 80s. And that has to be replaced. We're well under 50%. Mr. Biden's releasing already millions of barrels a week, and he just increased the tap to keep the gas prices before an election, I might add. Even many of the Democrat-leaning journalists say that it was a political move to keep gas prices low before the midterm. So he's putting us at a strategic risk for the Democrats to do better in the midterms, like keeping the gas prices from not going as high as they would. Joe Biden has created a situation with the oil and gas that has put this country at risk. He cuts production here. He lies about how much he's increased the number of leases that are being out there. I talked to a couple of friends in the oil business and say that it's total camouflage. It's harder than ever before to get any of these leases. It doesn't matter how many numerically that they theoretically are putting out there. They're even more and more difficult to get than ever before. And they put such restrictions on those leases that you won't be able to even break even. So no one's taking up on him on that leases. And then he complains about that. He complains no one's taking him up on his offer. Well, no one's going to do that at a loss. Joe Biden has put this country at risk, and then when he puts our fate in the hands of foreign oil sources, the Saudis cut it, and further puts us at risk. Then it comes out that the Saudis said that Joe Biden had called them and asked them to delay this until after the midterms, at least. That when they got word that they were going to cut the production, they said, don't do it now, wait a month, wait till after the midterms. Now, let's do a little history, guys. Donald Trump got impeached the first time because of a call to the Ukrainian President Zelensky asking him to help him domestically, politically, by finding dirt on Hunter Biden. He got impeached for that. What's the difference between him calling Zelensky and asking for a favor or Biden asking the Saudis for a favor politically? What's the difference? Did Biden commit an impeachable offense? If you believe Trump did, then yes. If you didn't, then no. But I'm just saying there is no real significant difference. Biden called the Saudis, according to them, to try to get them to delay their oil cuts till after November 8th. And that way the elections will already been passed, and whatever impact it would have had would not be felt in the midterm election. But they did it anyway, and he feels betrayed, and he's angry, and he feels like that they didn't do him right. I hope, if the Republicans take over the House, I really hope that they don't spend all their time in investigations of Hunter Biden's laptop and blah, 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 blah. But this is something I think needs to be looked at. Did the president call the Saudis and try to get them to do something politically advantageous for him and his party, just like Trump did supposedly in 2018, or it was 18 or 19 actually. It was 19 when this call was made and the impeachment process began. When I heard that, I was like, doesn't anybody have any consistency in their approach anymore? If it was wrong for Trump to do it, it's wrong for Biden to do it. And I believe both are true. I think Trump, did he deserve to be impeached for that call? That was it was a pretty weak impeachment case, but he was wrong to do it. He shouldn't have done that. Biden did the same thing, and the press nods along. So I'm just hoping that this doesn't go uninvestigated. As far as the election and all the impact on it, I'm going to save that for tomorrow, because there is a lot to talk about. You know, talk about polls and talk about campaigns in particular, certain ones. But I am going to bring up the point. One point is that it's almost like Mr. Biden and the Democratic leadership lives in a fantasy land, that they could say whatever they want and think we're going to believe it. That they can believe whatever they want, and it's so. And that no case, I think, underscores that any better than this relationship with the Saudis. The Saudis are not our friends. The Saudis are not our allies. They're our economic partners. They are our partners in dealing with the Iranians and whatnot. Even the Israelis get along better with the Saudis than we do now. But they're not our friends, so let's not go there. But I do think that this is going to have an impact going forward, that they have such a bad relationship that any attempt to try to moderate the Saudis and how they approach the oil policies is going to go flat, because they detest Joe Biden. And this is what the gist of the Wall Street Journal article talks about. Now, I'm going to end it with a couple of things, just a couple of tidbits in there. Britain is going through a lot of hair pulling because we're going to have a new prime minister. Liz Truss stepped down after 44 days as prime minister, and probably is going to be replaced by a guy named Sunak. I'm going to get the name right. I'm going to look it up because I mispronounce it sometimes. Sunak, I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. See, Rishi Sunak, that's what it is. Rishi Sunak is a British citizen born in Britain of Arabic descent, and he'll probably be your next prime minister. Is that going to be significant? It is, for the fact he'll be probably the first he will be the first non-Anglo prime minister. He's a conservative. I mean, politically, it's not going to make a lot of difference, but there you are. But how it affects the United States, there's a tangent. The British economy is in very, very bad shape, and hopefully Mr. Sunak can get it turned around. But they have worse inflation than we do. They have worse unemployment than we do, and they're in pretty bad shape. So keep an eye on the British. You never know what's going to happen. Also, there's tensions again between North and South Korea. They just exchanged some gunfire over the wire, as they say, over that DMZ, and that is, in both definitions by both countries, an act of war. So it's kind of escalating over there, and North Korea is sending nuclear test bombs over Japan and whatever else. So it's very, very concerning over there. Now, we go through these periods with the Koreas that they will get close to the brink, and then it'll ease off a little bit. But all it's going to take is one for it just to happen. So keep an eye on that. Well, that's all I got for the world news today. I just needed to catch up with a little bit. Kind of summarize Ukraine. God bless you. Give them hell, because what the Russians are doing to you and your country is an abomination. And I hope those handful of Republicans that are making noise about cutting back on aid, shut up and get smart. All right. That's about the best way I can put it. Also, Xi Jinping, he's going to be this generation's version of Mao in the sense of not just his power, but how we regard him. When I grew up as a kid, Mao Zedong was like this larger than life figure that was a threat to the United States until Nixon went over there and, and all that business. But keep an eye on that. And also the Saudis. That's going to have in my opinion, the most direct impact on us because they're not going to increase the oil production. And in fact, they'll probably end up cutting it again because it makes the price go higher. And one of the members of OPEC Plus, Russia, they're doing this to not just help their own oil prices, but to help Russia's oil prices. And they're going to do it again. And as long as we have the policy we do on energy, we're just going to have to take it. All right, tomorrow I'm going to talk about the elections. I'm going to talk about that misstatement, shall we say, by Mr. Biden right before the show that got me so spooled up. We'll be looking at that. On Thursday, I'm going to have two of our council members on, Ronnie Johnson and Rick Green, in the studio. I have a pretty full November, at least starting out. Also next week, a week from today, I have my friend from Thrive, Dee Dee Simpson, is going to come on and talk about social media and what they can do and what you as a business owner could do. Gabrina is going to be on, and she's bringing a guest. I'm pretty sure I know that who the guest is. We're going to wait until it's been confirmed, but it's one of the board members from the chamber. And also Harvest House will be on next Thursday, a week from Thursday. So we got a lot going on in the neighborhood. I hope you all tune in. Hope you drop by, and we'll see you tomorrow.